So I want to react to this video that I was watching earlier today about the Mikhaila Peterson interview with Ayaan Hirsi Ali and with Mohammed Hijab. In this part of the video, they're talking about misogyny. Is Islam inherently misogynistic? So Ayaan is going to say what she thinks, and Mohammed Hijab is going to say what he thinks, and we're going to talk about it a little bit. Okay, let's watch.
Your experience is Islam innately misogynistic?
The answer to that, unfortunately, is a clear-cut yes.
Okay.
Islam is misogynistic in its approach to women. I know that by saying this, I offend a lot of people. I know that people's feelings get hurt, the feelings of Muslims. I know that that is the case. But setting feelings aside and just looking objectively at what it is that Islam says about women.
And I mean, I would have to agree and think that she's right because I've definitely done some study and research on what Islam says about women and what your writings say about women. And I was actually I'm not going to say all of it was bad because definitely there are some parts that say, you should respect women and protect them and these kind of things, respect your mother, different things like that. But at the same time, like the other things that they said about women I was quite disgusted by some of the things that I read, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. So for me, actions speak louder than words. Now, I'm not going to say every Muslim is like this. I'm not saying every Muslim ascribes to some of these things that it says. I know that there's a lot of diversity in what people believe in Islam. That some people will maybe lean more towards the side of respecting and taking good care of women, but others may take the scriptures more literally and go by exactly what some of these terrible things say. But if you live in a Muslim country, I mean, my understanding is that these things are part of Sharia and that they pretty much stand. So, but let's listen to what else she has to say, and then we'll look at what Mohammed Hijab said to respond.
And where it positions us, the answer is yes, it is misogynistic. And I'll give you a few examples.
That would be good, yeah.
And I think the best example, because it's so factual, is the law, Sharia law, Islamic law. Islamic law declares that a woman has to have a male guardian at all times. That's not required of males. In Sharia law, a man is permitted to have 4 wives.
Now, I could see maybe why in Muslim countries why a woman should have a guardian, like to keep her safe when she goes out. Now, I mean, I could totally see some of that, in a sense, not to the extreme sense, of course, to where like, oh, she can't leave the house or else you're gonna beat her up or whatever, or like if she leaves the house, somebody on the street is just gonna come and rape her out of nowhere. I mean, that's ridiculous. I mean, that shouldn't even be happening because, I mean, hello, don't we need to have self-control? Just saying. But I mean, but it wouldn't be a bad thing if like her husband or her brother or her dad, maybe is going with her when she's going out, or another, another woman together. I mean, I don't think that's a bad thing per se, but as far as it being like a requirement and she cannot leave the house unless she has somebody all the time, always, forever, I mean, I really wouldn't like to feel that way. I always feel safer personally when my husband is with me, and I really don't like to go into the city and stuff like that by myself. I mean, I will go, I'll do it, obviously, because he's at work sometimes. I got to do shopping. I got to do what I got to do. I got to go out on my own. I don't mind, to do that. But of course, yeah, like I will agree that I feel safer when my husband is with me. And a lot of times I'll make him come with me because I'm like, hey, I want you to go. I really don't want to go by myself. Because I live in a place, well, my house, I live in a small town, but when we have to drive to the city, it's not super safe there. So yeah, so I could understand that part. So let's see what she's gonna say about the 4 wives thing.
she's not permitted to have four husbands.
Yeah, so what's up with that? Why is a man permitted to have four wives, but a woman can't have four husbands? I feel like that's kind of hypocrisy. Like, I could see the companion thing because, obviously women, a woman could not fight off a man, and 99% of the cases, 99.9% of the cases, a woman is not going to fight a man off if something happens to her. but but why four wives and the woman can't have four husbands? I mean, for me, it's disgusting either way. But if you're gonna do it, at least like do it right. That's all I'm saying.
In Islamic law, in Sharia law, a woman's testimony in court is worth half of that of a man.
So what's up with that? Why is a woman's testimony worth half of a man? What does that mean? That means we're what? We're just we're not smart. We're not intelligent enough to give a testimony or a word of any kind. I mean, how does that protect women? I feel like that doesn't protect women at all, actually. I feel like that exploits them because, if a woman gets raped or a crime gets done to her by a man, of course, the man's going to be like, well, I didn't do it. And if the woman's like, well, yeah, you did, and she doesn't have another witness, let's say she's alone, well, then what? I mean, then what's going to happen? Or what if somebody within her own family does something horrible, assaults her or something like that? I mean, then what? How does this protect women? That doesn't protect women in my opinion. Or I don't know anybody that would think that it did in anyone's opinion. I don't know. Explain it to me, please.
It's not the other way around. A sister inherits half of what her brother inherits.
Well, so why is that? Why does a woman get less of everything? So we have less of a testimony, we get less husbands, we get less inheritance. I mean, I don't know. I that doesn't really seem fair. It doesn't seem fair to me.
Wow.
And I mean, there's really no reason for it because, I mean, like I said, the only thing that I can see so far that has a reason is maybe, a man to, accompany a woman when she's going out somewhere for her to be safe, just because, she can't fight off a man. But none of this other stuff, to me, it's just kind of cruel,
And this goes on. And I think because these basic tenets of law, Sharia law, when they're implemented and where they're implemented, you see a huge difference between the way men and women are treated, girls and boys are treated. And I would say that is misogyny.
And because I'm not that familiar with Islam, is Sharia law something that's in the Quran directly?
Sharia law is derived from the Quran and from the teachings of the Prophet Muhammad. The Prophet Muhammad is the founder of Islam, and his legacy is a body of law and norms that are implemented where there is a theocracy like Saudi Arabia or Iran or any of the other societies that try to establish legal systems that are based on Islam.
Yeah, so from my understanding and everything that I know, that I've seen, that I've watched, that I've read, this is how it is when you live in a Muslim country, So, I mean, this is no mystery, so I don't really know how anybody can deny this. Like I said, I'm not saying that everybody functions this way, but this is kind of generally how it works. I remember watching an undercover documentary of somebody who went to Saudi Arabia, and I mean, they were like beating women in the streets. It was horrific. It was so bad, and they were treating women horribly. And this guy had a hidden camera. I'll have to see if I can find it. I'll put it in the description. But I saw this documentary a few years back before Saudi Arabia got more liberal and became different. They got rid of that now, but this was before that. So yeah, I mean, it wasn't pretty. And the guy almost, got caught. He almost went to jail because I guess they didn't want people to know what was really going on.
So another example on the misogyny side is women are expected to cover their bodies. And there is some kind of discussion on how much of that. In some cases, they let you show the face and the hands. And in extreme cases, you have to be covered from head to toe, confined to the house.
So I don't think obviously it's a bad thing to be modest. I don't think it's a bad thing to, to cover yourself as a woman, just out of modesty and respect for God. But I think it more should go together with what is appropriate based on where you are. So if you're at the beach and you're wearing a bathing suit, I don't think that's inappropriate. I don't think anybody should see that as inappropriate because you're at the beach, you're wearing a bathing suit, you're going in the water, you're outside in the sun. It's normal, right? But obviously you wouldn't wear a bikini inside like the grocery store and you wouldn't wear a bikini to church, right? Now I know there's some people that are even against wearing bikinis. They want you to have like a full one piece on. I feel like you can wear a bikini in a conservative way. I think it all depends on how you're wearing it. And I think it depends where you live and how you're presenting yourself. But I mean, obviously, I don't think it's a bad thing to be modest or to cover yourself. If you choose to cover your hair, I mean, I don't really think any of that is a bad thing. But as far as but it should be your choice. It should be your choice as a woman to decide what you want to do. It shouldn't be forced, and you shouldn't be like beaten for it if you don't do it. And you shouldn't be like thrown in jail or killed if you don't do it or something crazy. And your husband shouldn't be able to, like command you do this or that. I think that, of course, you should respect your husband in the way of not like, if he doesn't want you to be super provocative in the way that you dress, of course, like you should respect that because you're a married woman versus a single woman. But to what extent that goes, that's a long discussion. But that's what I think about. As far as like covering your face and your head, I mean, I feel like that's a bit extreme. But if the reason is so that you don't tempt a man, well, where's the where's the self-control of men to, just because you're tempted to do something, you've got to just do it now. I mean, that's insane. That's crazy. I mean, we could feel tempted to do things all day long, women or men, but should we act on it? No, we should have self-control. Fruit of the Spirit is self-control. And for a man to assault a woman or something like that because of the way she was dressed is crap, because nobody forced him to do that to her. Nobody forced him, on her. He could have looked away and kept it moving, right? Now, of course, as a woman, you shouldn't be presenting yourself a certain way specifically, to attract that kind of attention. But at the same time, it's a man's responsibility not to just falter to whatever his desires are. I mean, he should control his desires just like a woman can control her desires, whatever that may be.
Your male guardian chooses, or at least you need his endorsement to marry someone else. And all of this.
Yeah, and I know that some of that is cultural. In some cultures, a man will choose, husband, the father could choose a husband, or maybe the brother choose your husband or something like that. And that's cultural, I mean, I can't say that I necessarily will come against to that. For me, it's not the cultural norm. But I mean, I'm not going to say it's not the norm in other cultures. I would respect that. But as to say she can't divorce or leave unless he gives her the okay, I feel like that is dangerous to women, because then the husband knows he could treat you any kind of way. And if he's not a good man, that puts women at risk for violence.
Is based in Sharia law. If you're a woman and you're not happy in a marriage, it's almost difficult, almost impossible to divorce your husband. And the other way around, for a man to divorce his wife, all he has to say is declare in front of 2 witnesses 3 times that he divorces his wife, and that's done.
So how is that fair that he can do it but she can't? He can divorce her whatever he wants to do, any reason, but she can't. So I'm definitely opposed to that.
So on the question, is Islam misogynistic? I think these facts speak for themselves.
Is Islam inherently misogynistic?
Well, first and foremost, of course, misogyny needs to be defined, because if it's defined definitionally as it is in the kind of dictionary, the hatred of women, then the answer is very clearly no.
He says if it's defined by the hatred of women, the answer is no. Well, actions speak louder than words here. I'm going to read a couple of Quran verses because, I don't know if I definitely don't agree with that. So, according to Muhammad, I think we talked about this in another video, it says that most women end up in hell, and if she goes to heaven, she is a sex slave to one man, right? Like, who wants to do that? What's in it for women when they go to heaven, honestly? Like, who just wants to be a sex slave to a man all day long? Nobody. And then the men just get like 72 virgins, and they just keep becoming virgins over and over. That's just kind of weird. Like, why is heaven all about sexual desire? Why isn't it about God and being with God? This is just weird to me. So that doesn't really sound like, respect of women. Let's see, I have a few of them here. Sahih Bukhari 19498, Aisha narrates and says, "It is not good that you people have made us women equal to dogs and donkeys." Okay, well, that doesn't really sound respectful to women. What about this one? Sahih Muslim 1038. Women are compared to devils. Jabir reports that Allah's messenger, may peace be upon him, saw a woman, so he came to his wife Zainab as she was tanning a leather and had sexual intercourse with her. He then went to his companions. He told them, "The woman advances and retires in the shape of a devil. So when one of you sees a woman, he should come to his wife, for that will repel what he feels in his heart." Ew, that's just like, what? Are you kidding me? This one, Quran verse 2:2223. Your women are a tilth for you to cultivate, so go to your tilth as ye will, and send good deeds before you and your souls, and fear Allah, and know that He will one day meet Him. Give glad tidings to believers, O Muhammad. So we're just like a ground to till and cultivate, and we're just I don't know. This is just not cool. There's some other ones here. Here, my favorite. Not my favorite. Surah Nisa 4:38. The men are made responsible for the women, and God has endowed them with certain qualities and made them their bread earners. The righteous woman will cheerfully accept this arrangement, since it is God's commandment, and honor their husbands during their absence. If you experience rebellion from a woman, you shall first talk to them, and then you may use negative incentives like deserting them in bed, and then you may, as a last alternative, beat them. If they obey you, you are not permitted to transgress against them. God is most high, supreme. Wow. That really sounds like respectful towards women and not hatred towards women. I don't know if this is just a norm, then I guess it's not. But I guess for him, this is just like normal, and this is from God, and in his opinion, these teachings. So I guess in his perspective, this is not hatred towards women. But for me, this is all very nasty. Okay, let's see what else he has to say. He just started. This guy's a troll, but we'll hear what he has to say.
Because the Quran very clearly states in more than one verse, in chapter 3, verse 195, that God does not let to waste any action of any doer among you, men or women, and that both of you are from one another.
Well, if we're both from one another, then why are we treated equally? Why is there not equal treatment? Why can a man beat his wife? And why do they compare women? We say mostly women are ending up in hell, and comparing them to donkeys and dogs and devils and things like this. This doesn't sound like equal treatment to me, but I guess he's right. You do have to define what misogyny is, and in his opinion, this is not misogyny.
That in chapter 33, verse 35, the believing men and the believing women and the, and so on. And it mentions a list of attributes, mentioning men and women specifically, and then says that God has prepared for them a reward. And in fact, the Quran explicitly mentions that we cannot have hatred towards any believer.
Oh, what's the woman's reward? That she gets to be a sex slave in heaven? I mean, that doesn't sound like a reward to me.
Because it's mentioned in chapter 59 of the Quran, ربنا لا تجعل في قلوبنا غلا للذين آمنوا. God, do not put any hatred to the believers in our hearts. And that, of course, includes women as well. So from that perspective, it's impossible to postulate. It is impossible to postulate that Islam is misogynistic from that definitional perspective. But what we will say
is impossible if you don't think any of these verses that I just read are misogynistic or wrong towards women. So, of course, for him, it's impossible because this is his word of God that he believes has been given from the Prophet Muhammad. So, yeah, I could totally see why he thinks that this is impossible, that, it could be misogynistic because this is like the norm for him.
Of course, misogyny is a label that is used haphazardly and arbitrarily between people in the West in discourses to mean different things. So, of course,
that's crap. He's just honest. You're just deflecting. Like, you're just trying to make this about like Western feminism and Western misogyny. Like, that's not even the case. Like, this is just basic human dignity and respect. All women deserve dignity, and all people deserve dignity and respect. All people, no matter what you believe, no matter where you're from, no matter who you are, whether you agree or not with me or my Bible or anything else, women deserve the utmost dignity and respect, just as all people do. And I wouldn't say that any of these verses that I just read gives women any kind of respect whatsoever. Okay.
Conservatives or people that are more right-wing or alt-right are accuse themselves of being misogynistic by third-wave feminists and so on.
And I would not subscribe to Western standards of misogyny or feminism. There's definitely problems there too. I feel like that's the other extreme. But this kind of stuff in Islam about women, this is the other side of extreme to me. We need to meet somewhere in the middle. Honestly, what Jesus says about women is where we should be. Jesus respected women in a big way, and the teachings of the Gospels about the way he treated women and respected women are completely opposite from what this teaches.
And so it really depends on who is the one making the claim and what the robust definition that they have of misogyny is. And sometimes that can be ideologically kind of inspired. In the case of third-wave feminists, I would say it certainly is.
I just love how he just kind of blames other cultures and how he just doesn't really answer the question. I feel like he's just kind of like deflecting and tiptoeing around, and he's just not really being direct. I feel like he should have addressed some of the things that Ayaan said and said, yeah, I believe this is okay, or no, I don't, and I believe this is misogynistic, or I don't, instead of just being like, well, if you're in the West and this is what you think, then maybe you do, and if you're not, then maybe you don't, and I don't really know. Like, he's just, I don't know.
That's why, unfortunately, even your father has been accused of misogyny. I mean, people in the...
Now he's just bringing out every possible thing that he can use to just completely conflate the point. Oh, even Jordan Peterson is accused of misogyny, so who knows what misogyny even really is? Like, we know what it is. It's not providing dignity and respect for women. That's what it is. That period. I mean, of course, there, like I said, there's extremes in feminism, but I mean, hello, some of the stuff that I read, I mean, calling, saying that it's okay to beat your wife into submission, saying that, you can call her names and demeaning her, apparently marital rape is not a crime in Muslim countries, putting women like, oh, you're all going to be in hell, most of you guys are going to be in hell, and all these kind of things, putting barren women like they're worthless, like they don't have any kind of worth and they shouldn't be able to be married, saying that we're just a tilth to cultivate, like we're just basically here for reproduction, and that's the feeling that I'm getting. Like I said, I'm not saying everybody feels this way. I'm not saying all Muslims feel this way, because of course that's not the case. But according to your scriptures and your writings, this is what your prophet felt about women, and I applaud you if you don't follow this and you do respect your wives and daughters and women, and you don't do these horrible things. I totally do, and like that's awesome if you're not like that, and if you don't really agree with these things. But I mean, like, even this scripture tells you. Okay, listen to this one. This is it says women must be devoutly obedient to their husbands. So we're not allowed to think. We're not allowed to like come back at you. We're not allowed to be like, hey, I don't agree with that. No, we have to be devoutly obedient to their husbands, or else your husband will refuse to sleep with you and beat you. Quran 4:34, and also in Sahih Muslim 4:2127, where Aisha was struck in the face and in the chest, and by Sunan Abu Dawud, and oops, sorry, no. I gotta snip that out. And Sunan Abu Dawud 10:1900, it tells you how to beat her by avoiding the face, not breaking bones, and don't sleep with them after you beat them. Sahih Bukhari 2:62-132, and Al-Tabari 5:68-69. It even has instructions on how to beat your wife. So I mean, come on, like, are you kidding me? I can't. I really can't.
The West, credible intellectuals and academics have been accused of misogyny just because they believe in a traditional traditional values of family system, a complementarian family system. And for this reason, they're accused of misogyny. So, but one has to say this, and I think this is very important, Mikhaila, that we believe that there is an equality of value between men and women. We do believe that there's an equality of value between men and women.
How is that, though? How are we of value if it's okay to beat us? If it's okay to tell us instructions on how we should be beaten? How is that? Explain to me how.
The Prophet himself, Muhammad, he said, إِنَّمَا النِّسَاءُ شِقَائِقُ الرِّجَالِ, that certainly men are equal to women.
Okay, but actions speak louder than words. If women don't have the same rights as men, I'm not saying in the way of roles. I'm not saying like men and women don't have different roles. I'm saying like rights to dignity and respect. Just straight up rights to dignity and respect. How is that equality? We should be treated the same, with the same dignity and respect as men should. Men and women have different roles, yes, in what we do in the home and things like that. But as far as dignity and respect, that should be 100% equal.
In front of the law, that is the general rule. That is a statement of the Prophet Muhammad. However, we do believe in exceptions, and we don't believe that equality of value means identicality in roles. And so, of course, people that are detractors from the other side, like the academic charlatan Ayaan McGann.
Oh, watch now. He's going to insult her.
Actually means refugee in the Somali language. Of course.
So that whole thing where he says, oh, your last name means refugee in the Somali language. He says that like 4 or 5 times in this video. If you go back and watch the whole thing, he's going to say it 4 or 5 times. Like it's so funny because he's like, no, women and men are the same and we respect women and blah, blah, blah. And, but then he proceeds to disrespect her and humiliate her and just cut her down instead of staying on the point of the argument. And then he continues to do it throughout the entire video. Like, most of his responses are just him like personally eviscerating her as a person instead of talking about the actual issue and the topic at hand. Like, Mikhaila even has to remind him to stay on topic. That's because that's how bad he gets with it. Like, it's absolutely ridiculous.
It's an ironic reminder to herself. She would say that Islam is
See, he's just trying to demean her and just cut her down. But you respect women so much.
misogynistic because of practices such as polygyny, which means that a man can marry more than one wife. And that is a practice that Muslims believe in. Or practices such as
Well, at least he admits that.
that Muslim men can marry Christian and Jewish women.
How many wives do you have?
And of course, that is something that Muslim women cannot do in Islam as well. And various other inheritance things or aspects where there is a differential there between how men are treated to women. But we will say that equality of value does not mean identicality in roles.
Okay, but that's not a role. Okay, explain to me how inheritance is a role. Explain to me how polygamy is a role. Explain to me how women not being able to go out by themselves is a role. I don't know how that's a role. I mean, leadership is a role, decision making is a role, mothering, taking care of the home is a role. A role is like something you can do, not something you have a right to, per se. Yeah, that's crap what he's saying.
Let me say that one more time. Equality of value, we believe, does not mean identicality in roles.
Is it a role to be the beater of wives? Like, you're the one who gets to beat the wife and the wife can't hit you back? Is that a role, though? I mean, I want to know, like, is this what you're talking about?
And therefore, just like Aristotle said, that like things should be treated likewise.
In Christianity, the role of the woman and the man, of course, is different, but there's no like disrespect there. There's roles in leadership, in the home and things like that, but it's not like a rote obedience of just, okay, I'm just gonna get down on my knees and do whatever you say as soon as you ask me to do it. Yeah, there are verses like that in the Quran as well, like that I have it listed here, that talk about like whatever you're doing. Here we go. This one. I don't know if I'm pronouncing this correctly. Okay. Talik bin Ali narrated that the Messenger of Allah said, when a man calls his wife to fulfill his needs, then let her come, even if she is at the oven. So she needs to drop everything what she's doing and, for lack of a better word, get on her knees and, yeah, whatever. You know what I'm saying? This is just like, are you kidding me right now? I mean, this is total disrespect of women. This is complete and utter disrespect. Like if we're just property, like if we're children or something, like stop what you're doing right now and come and do whatever I tell you to do, whether you want to do it or not, whether you're having pain, whether you're not feeling well, whether you're feeling whether you're having difficulties emotionally that day, whatever it may be, stop what you're doing and give it up right now. How is that dignified or respectful towards women? I mean, I don't know if you'd feel the same way if something was going inside of your body. I'm just saying.
And that different things should be treated the same. We do believe that women have...
That's easy to say when you're a man. And you know what? Like, how are you a man talking from a woman's perspective in Islam? You don't know how that feels because you've never had to be that person. So Ayaan is saying how she felt and what she experienced. And Mohammed Hijab, you've obviously never experienced what it's like to be a woman in Islam. So I don't really know how you could speak on it so passionately as if you know how she feels. I think you should have a little bit more caring and a little bit less anger and craziness like you do.
A collective female temperament on certain aspects, which need to be tailored for in legislation, which need to be tailored for in social and political life. And so therefore, If someone wants to use second wave, feministic, collectivistic discourses,
That's not even what this is about. Just stop. This has nothing to do with second wave feminism. It really doesn't. That's not even what she's talking about, like in any way. None of this stuff has anything to do with feminism. It just doesn't.
to try and attack the Islamic narrative, then they must first establish the truthfulness and the objectiveness of second wave feministic discourses. I and Hirsi is a feminist. We are opposed to feminism, and we say that feminism has now almost certainly been cracked open as a false ideology. Of course, I think I should add to this, in addition to all that was aforementioned, that Ayaan McGann herself was embroiled in the most embarrassing.
Oh, here we go. And now he's just gonna, cut her down again. Now he's just gonna disrespect her and humiliate her again. So this is twice in just one part of the argument. not even in the last like 20 minutes. He's already just eviscerating her personally, which has nothing to do with it has nothing to do with the topic. You don't need, I mean, she doesn't do this at all. Like in the entire video, she doesn't say one thing about him personally. But he does it multiple times. I think he does it in almost every single response except like one or two responses. He just comes and eviscerates her and just, and do you know what she did and who she is, and then he just cuts her down again and says what her last name really means, and like he just keeps going on and on.
Of public inquiries, if you can call that, whereby she herself was in a polygynous relationship. She was a mistress.
Yeah, I don't even want to hear his nonsense.
That Islam.
You know what's in your cheap protein powder? Well, here to tell us is
misogynistic. To the contrary. And one last thing I will say is McGann herself is blissfully ignorant. Ayaan McGann, Ayaan Hirsi McGann, blissfully ignorant.
Here we go again. There we go. I'm just going to start calling her names and just going to tell her how ignorant she is and how stupid she is. This just goes to show you how he really feels about women.
Of the Islamic tradition, the underqualified, overconfident, ultra-crepidarian.
Oh, wow. He just did 4 name calls in a row. Look at that. How does that look on you? Really? How does it look?
Academic charlatan, right-wing apple polish-up, obsequious woman that she is.
Oh, wow. What is that? Like 6 or 7 now? How many are we up to? How many derogatory names is he going to call her?
Doesn't even know that
Look, Mikhaila, she's just like, I can't even believe this.
Doesn't even know the basics of the Islamic tradition. Mentions in her book,
she's mortified.
Heretic, in page 77, that we worship Muhammad. She doesn't even know the basics of the religion. She makes squandering.
How do you know what she knows? Like, how do you know?
Mistakes one after the other about gender in jurisprudence in Islam. In her latest book, Pray, you can see it in page 151, where she makes a series of.
Oh, here we go. And he just keeps going on and on about her. And I mean, he's not even talking about, he's supposed to be talking about the religion and how it's misogynistic or how it's not. I mean, you're just going on and on about this woman.
Unsubstantiated claims about
Muslims. And you saw her, the initial thing that she said. I mean, she didn't say anything about him personally. She doesn't at all in the entire video.
Muslim women and their rights in Islam, saying that their rights can be sold to strangers and all kinds of nonsense propositions which have no basis in the religion.
But wait, he just said that none of that's true. But I mean, didn't he just say some things about inheritance and property and things like that? Oh yeah, we got some of that, and he's just trying to throw it under the rug, real quick. Like, just don't even worry about that, but let's talk about this,
of Islam. So if you really want to know about women's rights in Islam, one has to go to the source, and this ultra crepid.
Oh, you have to go. Why is he obsessed with this word, ultra crepidarian? He says this word like 5 or 6 times throughout the stream. Why is he obsessed with this word? And he says, go to the source. We just did that, and I just read some of the source to you, and I'm just saying, like, you let me know what you think.
Academic charlatan Ayaan is just a failure who's...
Look, this is the 3rd time, 4th time he's insulting her in this response.
Who's been let in by the most unusual types of affirmative action program to the neoconservative.
Oh my gosh, now he's being like racist, talking about you got let in by affirmative action. Like you're not even Like, you didn't even get your opportunities by your own merit. You got it by affirmative action. Are you kidding me?
Circles because she has no academic acumen at all.
Okay. So I'd like to just keep the rest of the conversation if we can try to attack the idea rather than the person.
Boom. She calls him out. He does it like 4 times in just this response. She's like, are you kidding me?
Otherwise, I'm never going to be able to have any guests on this show again for
Oh
opposing
my
views. Okay.
gosh. Yep. Call him out. Call him out.
Okay. I have one follow-up question about what you just said, because I think I understand a bit, but you talked about that in regards to believers. So what about non-believers? Like, how does the kind of
Okay, so yeah, that's all I'm going to talk about in this part of the stream. I'm going to talk about another part of it in another video because it's super duper long. So I'm going to cut it down a bit. But yeah, he talks later on about Islam and Christianity, and we'll talk about that on another video. But you know, I was just really disgusted by the things I read in the writings. I'm just like, I can't even. It's just so different the way that Jesus treats women. I just want to talk about a couple of things real quick before we go. The part in the Gospels where Jesus meets Jairus, an official from the synagogue, and he comes to Jesus to beg to heal his daughter. And while they're on the way, there's a suffering woman who has the issue of blood. She's been bleeding for 12 years, and she's gone to doctors, and, nothing can fix her, and she just continually bleeds, right? And, blood was unclean back then, so you wouldn't have been able to touch somebody, or else they were ritually unclean after that. So Jesus turns his attention from the synagogue official to the woman when she touches the hem of his garment. So, but I think we know that was the tzitzit, the tassels that the Jewish men wear on the bottom of their garments, whatever they wore back then. So by religious norms, of course, the woman's touch of even his cloak would have rendered him unclean. But if the woman expects him to be angry with her for approaching him, which she was probably afraid, she's greatly surprised. He says nothing of her ritual impurity, so he doesn't call her out, he doesn't call her unclean, but he calls her daughter. And he says that her faith has made her well and tells her to go in peace. So Jesus recognizes the dignity of this woman in situations that seemed by ritual law to demand for judgment. For example, the sinful woman, who anoints Jesus in Luke 7:36 through 50, and that of the woman caught in adultery in John 8:3 through 11. So this is just one instance of how Jesus treats women with dignity and respect. There's many that I'm going to go through in another video with a comparison, but that's just one, that we can say real quick. And I want to read the passage in Ephesians 5 about husbands and wives. So it says in verse 22, wives, submit to your own husbands as to the Lord, for the husband is the head of the wife, even as Christ is the head of the church, his body, and is himself its Savior. Now, as the church submits to Christ, so also wives should submit in everything to their husbands, right? So that doesn't mean that she should just blindly submit to everything her husband says, and she's just like, a blind dog that just follows him and whatever he does. Like, if her husband is doing drugs and he wants her to go prostitute with him or something, is she going to do that just because he said so? No, she has her mind and she can think for herself. Or if he's like, hey, let's bring another woman into our bed and have a threesome, is she going to say, oh yes, I must submit to my husband because the Bible says so, because I don't think for myself, I better just go ahead and do that, right? No, that's not what this verse is saying. This is saying respect your husbands and submit to them as you would to God. And, obviously, like, don't be disrespectful and whatever. But of course, this isn't just like a rote obedience. That's not what this verse is about. And this is true because right after verse 24, verse 25 says, "Husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her, that he might sanctify her, having cleansed her by the washing of water with the word, so that he might present the church to himself in splendor, without spot or wrinkle or any such thing, that she might be holy and without blemish. In the same way, husbands should love their wives as their own bodies." Does that sound like a religion where you should beat your wife or you should hurt her? Would you beat your own body? Would you hurt your own body? It doesn't say that. No, it says in the same way, husbands, love your wives as their own body, because he who loves his wife loves himself. For no one has ever hated his own flesh, but nourished it and cherished it, just as Christ does the church. Jesus gave himself up for the church. It says that he died for us. So it says, husbands, love your wives and give yourself up for your wives, just as Christ did for the church. Like, that's pretty deep. That doesn't sound like any of the stuff that I read in the Islamic writings, like, at all, in any way. I'm just saying, if it does, you tell me. And it says in verse 30, "Because we are all members of his body, therefore a man shall leave his father and mother and hold fast to his wife," not wives, it says his wife, "and the two shall become one flesh." It doesn't say the five shall become one flesh. It says the two shall become one flesh. This mystery is profound, and I'm saying that it refers to Christ and the church. However, let each one of you love his wife as himself, and let his wife see that she respects her husband. So it's a bond between them both. It's a codependent bond together. It's women respecting their husbands and men respecting their wives. And the reason why the wife is going to feel comfortable to submit to her husband is because he respects her so much that she doesn't have to fear that he's going to take advantage of that role that he has as head of the house and disrespect her or hurt her. So she should feel comfortable with that. Now, maybe you don't have a good husband. Maybe your husband is not good or respectful, and maybe he's not encouraging you to do good things. Well, God is the head, is the order. So you're going to go by what God would want you to do first, as far as your relationship with God would come first, and then your husband. So if your husband's telling you to do something that's against God's word, then you're going to listen to God first before you're going to listen to your husband. So that's the balance there. But I just wanted to mention that before we go, just as a comparison, and we'll go a little deeper into that in another video.